Good afternoon. Welcome to another afternoon session of free Avolites training. We have now entered May of 2020. Time is flying. My name is Aaron. I am here for the next 45 minutes or so. We're going to be talking about AI this afternoon, and we are going to be specifically looking at bringing generative content into AI, a couple of little ways of preparing it, and sort of how you can operate it from inside of AI. Okay, so first of all, let's have a quick think about the different ways that we can use content in generative content inside of AI. So our main approach is we've got the built-in generative content page, dynamic content page. That's this one here on the Perform tab. What this does, this lets us run shader code in real time. Don't worry if any of this doesn't make sense at the moment. I'm going to come back and capture a few more bits of these. This lets us do shader code. So you can build your own patches, and we're going to look at that today, and then run those in real time. You can either run them from this page, or we can export them and run them from our performance page during the show. One of the other big main ones we support is a product called Notch. So Notch is described as a real-time generative system for creating visual effects or for creating generative content, real-time graphics. And just to confirm what we mean here, when we say generative content, it tends to get used as an overall thing nowadays. It means something which is generated in real time. It doesn't specifically mean something visual to look at. It could be a way of processing the video signal or anything like that. The essential fact is that it's done in real time, and because it's done in real time, you retain control right up to the time that it's being executed. So that means we could have embedded controls to change color or position or things like that within our composition in real time. So as I say, we support Notch. Notch is a real industry standard. Really, if you can bring it onto your projects, that's the best way to approach generative content. The whole system is set up for quite easily constructing generative and interactive systems. So I think the first thing that we should do, let us look at what we need to do when exporting a block from Notch. So a block is the thing that we export, and we load that block directly into AI so that it runs as part of the overall code of AI. And there's just a couple of little simple things you have to do on your project when you're exporting them from Notch. So first of all, I'm going to load up Notch Builder. So Notch Builder is the program from the Notch suite which actually lets you construct and export to media servers. Some of the licenses don't let you export to a media server license. Let me just have a quick fiddle with my screen there. Okay. There we go. I'm sorry, I'm just playing my screens a little bit there, and I shouldn't have touched it at all. There we go. Okay, cool. So all I'm going to do in Notch, I'm just going to basically load one of the samples. I'm not going to build a whole block in front of you. Let's just use this balls sticky one. There we go. Okay, so there are two things we need to do when we're using a Notch block in a project, or to create a Notch block for a project, I should say. We need to expose any parameters in the Notch block that we want to control during our performance, and then we need to export that block ready for AI. So I've had a bit of a look at this one earlier, and I was going to just do a couple of really simple bits on here. So the 3D object, I should be able to adjust its position. Here we go. Okay, so we've got a left and a right on the object there. And we've got an up and a down as well. I'm just going to basically control those two, I think. So to the left of parameters, which show in the Notch parameters bar, it may be a little bit hard to see on the screen. There is a grayed out question mark. If you give that a press, so we'll do the one next to position, and you've got to tick this box here, exposed property settings, and there's a tick box which says exposed property. So we tick on that, and the name here, expose name, this is what we're going to see in AI. So I'm going to just accept that one, and I'm going to tick on the Y position one as well. You can see that we can set up ranges here, and these value ranges are relative to the notch values. As they are, we're just taking the standard values, which generally are 0 to 1 in notch, but not exclusively. So we're going to publish those two. What I'm also going to do, in fact, I am going to adjust the scale, there we go, of this object. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm going to publish all three scale properties. There we go. So they are now all exposed. Okay, so I've got this all set up now. I'm kind of happy with everything as it was. So then at the top bar on the project browser, project tab, we have compile block for media server. So it's worth remembering now that AI supports 64-bit notch blocks because we're now a 64-bit software. And modern versions of Notch, current versions are only 64-bit, so you no longer have export 32-bit block as an option down there. So I'm going to find a destination for this. I am going to go to my desktop, and let's just call it balls. And we're going to press save, and then we're going to OK that one. So that's all we need to do in Notch. We just need to expose any parameters that we want to control. And then we need to export the media block. Good afternoon, Christopher. That is useful. I'm not going to be focusing very much on Notch, I'm afraid, today. Just really that. I just wanted to show that bit of exposing parameters and publishing them. So we saved that and everything. I'm going to close Notch down now. And let's run AI. I sometimes find that my Notch dongle can be a bit funny if I've got both AI and Notch running at the same time, which is why I'm jumping out of one and into the other. As is always with webinars, you try and restrict the things that are going to cause you problems as much as possible. Okay, so so the block I've exported there is actually, we're not going to pass any signal through it, we're just going to show the thing that was in the block. So if we just want to load a block into the system, if you go to the AI icon on the bottom right, then the output section, that single DVI connector, and then the stage patch section, that's the one with the two modules with an interconnection between them on the icon. Okay, so we're in the stage patch, and for those more traditional people, this is the same as pressing the stage patch button here. It takes you to the same place. The interface can sometimes be a little nicer. It's got a few more bells and whistles on it. There's a patch here that's called Notch, and we can tell it's a patch and that it can be expanded because it's grey at the top, unlike this multi-monitor out module, which is blue, so we can't open that one any further. So I'm going to double click in the Notch area. Okay, so what we've got 8 little modules here. Now in each of these modules we can load an individual Notch block. Now I've kind of not given you too much of a definition on Notch's hierarchy. So a block is the overall file that you load into AI. But within a block you can have multiple layers. So think of a layer as a different process or effect within that single block. Layers could be thought of as pages in a book, whereas the block is the book itself. And we can generally look at one page at a time. So some people like to produce blocks where it's just one layer per block, and other people like to have one block with all their layers in, so they're just loading one block and they switch between the layers at the appropriate time. Now what we do is we actually give you 8 wrappers here so that you can load 8 blocks at a time. Then we select them through the layer effects, which means that you can easily then choose which of those blocks you're pointing to. It's not dedicated to a physical layers signal line or anything. Okay, so let's just get a single block in here first. Let's get the one we just made. We're going to go to desktop, we're going to go to balls. Now, in fact, before I do this, you'll see at the moment that this is blank. This text area is going to show us the location of the file. It's blank at the moment, and the way I always know that it's loaded in is when the name appears there. So let's just do that again. So we'll go desktop, we're going to load that one, and we can see it's shown us the name already, so it's now ready for us to jump in. So I'm going to go back to the performance page. So as I said with this one, we're not processing the signal. We're just playing back the block itself. Let's just do that. Let's just move that up there a little bit, like so. Okay, so we need to select the notch effect. So that is effect number 86. Now, if I'd been sensible, I could have made myself a scene trigger with just jump straight to notch. Okay, and then we're going to take the block down to 0. And this one might take a moment just because it's a complex generative structure. There we go. And let's just pump the layer. There we go. Okay, so you can see now when I'm on the correct layer, so this is only one layer, but if I go off the layer, you'll see those parameters disappear. So we program it so that only the parameters relative to the current layer are what is shown here. So we can see those parameters that I put into notch. I've given them too big a range there, so you can see I've got my horizontal and I've got my vertical there. I should have probably played with the range tools a little bit in notch just to give myself a more suitable range. It should have gone into the minus there, so a 0 is the center for us. And we've got our scale for the spheres as well. Ooh, they're a bit big. Cool. Oh, they look quite kind of creepy. But yeah, so you can see I've got real-time control over these elements. Now, a nice thing when you're running Synergy is that all of these parameter names, your notch parameter names, will automatically get transferred over to the console. So instead of seeing raw DMX or a generic parameter name for notch, as you would normally expect if there's not a special personality for a device on the console, we read the names out of AI, pass them into the console, so you will see the proper names that you've assigned to those parameters, but you'll see them on the console itself. Okay, so let's just reset that one. I just wanted to load another block in. I just want to load one with some layers in. In fact, what we'll do here, let's load the block into the second slot here. Go into there. I've got some 64-bit video blocks, so I grabbed these blocks just straight from the Notch website. They're just a free download. Let's have a try. Let's try Neon. That's quite a nice one. You see this one's a little slower to load because it's got a lot more going in. So what I tend to do, if I've got a show that is using Notch, I would recommend when you get everything set up, you test all your stuff before the show, just pump through the Notch blocks, make sure they're loaded properly. Once they're there, they're there. Okay, so we have our 2 blocks now. So I'm going to go back to my performance page. Let's just let's just reset that. Click on there. So if I click on that layer controller, I can use the arrow keys just to take it down a little bit. Let's just do apply defaults. There we go. So let's get back down to Notch, like so. We're going to that first block. There we go. Block was already in memory there, so it remembered it. So we've still got that one. Now we've got a second block. He says, there we go. So now this block, this is the neon block. This one has loads of different layers inside of it, like so. So there's loads of different sort of funky things that can be done with it, like so. So you can store multiple layers inside a single block. That's the key thing there. Okay, so Notch, build your thing in Notch, expose your parameters, export for a media server, and you do need the builder version of AI to export from a media server. I think you can export a watermarked version. If I have time, Ruben, I will get on to that. I'm going to have to think about it. Ruben is asking me if I can go through using Notch blocks as patches instead of effects. At the moment, right, let me bear with that in mind, and when I've done the next bit, if I've got time to approach it, I will do. Okay, so the second thing I wanted to show you very quickly was, let's turn that notch block off. There we go. Okay, so dynamic content page. Let's have a really quick look at how you get stuff into here, because this is a question I get quite often. Okay, so just for now, I'm going to just shrink my interface down. So if you go to File, Open, and in the Patches section, go to Dynamic Content, there's a Templates box there. So we've got a couple of little examples here. So what we'll look at first, we'll look at bringing a Shadertoy template in and using that in our generative content, and then I'll just show you bringing in some GLSL. Sorry, I'm getting talked at in multiple windows here. Okay, my friend Sleepy Tom has confirmed that we need Notch Pro Builder to make notch blocks. Okay, so let's bring in some Shadertoy. So what we've done is we've created templates. So when you are using the dynamic content page, everything loads, and it loads with this controller. So when we build the patches, we build them with that controller inside. So this is the patch itself. Double click on here to open it up, and here we can specify our parameters, which we'll do in a moment, and then double click on this one that says shader code. Let's just get rid of that for the moment. Okay, so I have an example. In fact, I forgot to open my window. There we go. So I have an example from Shadertoy. We're going to just paste this basic star field. Now, when you come on to Shadertoy, shadertoy.com, when you choose a specific shader, it will often present you with a lot of code at the side. Now, I'm not going to go in deeply today as to what shader code is and what it does and all that kind of stuff, but I wanted to show you that it is possible to copy and paste pretty hassle-free. You'd have to usually do a little bit of editing. So I'm just going to select all of this text. I'm going to do Control-C to copy it, and what we're looking for is we're going to hopefully get this star field effect. Now, I think this one is going to give me an error. So the top area, this defines our uniforms, things like our floats and our vectors, our inputs, stuff like that. The main part here is where we paste the body of our code, and there is a fragment operation at the bottom. Anyway, this middle section is where we're going to paste. So back before that, I'm just going to change this compiler a little bit. So using the control button, I can bring all this down. Just brought the bottom of that down. I like to just have a slightly longer window. There we go. Okay, cool. So this is the compiler. So when we press compile, it runs through the code and it tells us if it's okay or if there's a problem there. So I think this is going to give us a problem. So I'm just pasting all of my code there. Click out of the box and then press compile. Okay, so this is fine. So this is telling me that on line 82, so the number in brackets is the line with the error, and it tells me there's a variable that's quoted here. So this means it's said in this text, but it's not mentioned up here. Now, I know that some of the code on Shadertoy varies from the standard a little bit. So if I just adjust that variable at the top, I think this is going to pass. There we go. Okay, so we've got the star field up there. So always look in this compiler, look for the line. Now I knew, because I'd actually looked at this bit of code earlier, if I'd followed it down to the correct line, I'd have realised that it was asking for I time rather than I, whatever it was that I just changed it from. And it's now given me an input here for I time. So I just need to give it a clock so that things move. And the easiest way to do this is if you go down to the time section in the modules, and if you use clock tick, and just connect render time up to I time, like so. Cool. So that one looks really good to me. So what I'm also going to do there, let's just save this under a new name. So I'm going to click back on my root, just close the window as well, because sometimes the window pops open if you've got it saved with it open. Okay, let's close that one. Close that one there. So I'm going to just save this into the folder. So this is C, Avolites, AI, Distrib, Patches, Dynamic Content. I am going to make a new folder. Let's just call that Aaron. And we're going to call that Starfield. Cool. So, now by default, the folder that I've added is not here. If you right click on this browser and do refresh list, there we go. So it's added my Aaron folder. There we go. For some reason it's got, oh there we go. It's got the wrong thumbnail in there. I think there must have been a thumbnail image in there. So I can see this is working in my preview. I then need to activate it to the screen, like so. I'm going to push my opacity up. Brilliant. And then if I want, I can change my colour and stuff like that. Now this page automatically overrides the layers. So if it's the only thing you want playing at a time, then the dynamic content page is great. But sometimes you want more mixing control. So we can set things up. If we've got parameters that we've stated, we can adjust them, and then we can do save to patch. Let's just throw that onto my desktop. Starfield. One of the things I quite like about doing it like this as well is you do get a proper little thumbnail on it. So I'm just going to go back to my performance page and drag in Starfield, like so. There we go. No, it has the wrong thumbnail. And if I click on that, then I've now got my patch and I've got my standard sort of layer stuff that I can do to it. I can put effects on it. That was a misclick there. You can see I've got a kaleidoscope going on it now. And so bringing stuff in like Shadertoy can be quite nice and easy. Now you might want to bring stuff in that's not in a Shadertoy type wrapper. You might just want to bring in some more standard stuff. So let me open one I've got here. Okay, cool. Let's just get rid of that interface again just for the moment to make things a little bit easier. So we're going to go marginally deep, but again I'm not going to go really massively deep. I just want to show you some of the possibilities of adding inputs and stuff like that for shader code. Let me just see what my chat box is doing right now. Okay, so we've got a couple of things here. Now I know that this LFO is controlling the size of these circles. If I put it up really high, you can see that it's going to have a really high upper value. I want to put a variable in, a control that I can vary that upper limit. So without too much explanation, I'm going to add a fader. And the idea of this bit is I'm going to just show you ways that we can add interactive and controllable elements. I'm going to do a simple math statement. Look at the formula. And I'm going to take the value of my LFO and I'm going to multiply it by my fader. So that would normally be A multiplied by B, but I also know that I want to increase the range of my value fader by 2. There we go. So what I'm saying is B times 2 and multiply the sum of that by A. Cool. So now, if I put that into my size port, there we go. So it's 0 at the moment, which is why we're seeing nothing. I can push it all the way up. We get a really big, you can see I'm controlling that size there. So what I'm going to do, I quite like to embed things like MIDI inside my patches. So I'm going to just right click on this fader, edit MIDI map. I've got a controller plugged in, I've got a nano control. And we're just going to use that one there. There we go. So you can see that moving my fader, as I move that, I'm pumping the size of those circles. Now, one more thing I want to do, I want to add a color variable to that. So I'm going to just very quickly open my notepad here, because this is going to be, so when I'm dealing with these shader code text notepads, they're not very easy to deal with in AI. So what I do is I tend to, if I click in the area, Control C to copy everything, then I just paste it in Notepad just to make my life very slightly easier. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an input here, and then we're going to control RGB. So we'll have 3 faders and we'll MIDI control each fader. So without me explaining, I'm going to add a uniform vector 3. It's a 3-place vector, and I'm going to call it RAGRBL. So I've just called it something that I know isn't going to be referenced in the code. And then I am going to just, at the end here, this section here is where the final sum is done. So I'm going to, because I've added this value, regribler, I'm going to multiply it by my colour. Now, like I say, I'm not going to explain this at all. You're just going to have to accept that what I'm doing is acceptable. Okay. So hopefully, if I copy and paste that now, when I paste this and press compile, we should see another port open up here. Assuming I haven't made any mistakes. No, there we go. Okay, cool. So now what we're doing is we're going to take an RGB value and multiply it against the white of that other one. So the easiest way for me to do this is add a constant. So what I tend to do, if I'm using lots of generative patches, I tend to use a standard set of controls across my patching, because I'm unlikely to be running all of my patches at the same time. Cool, so we're just making a 3-place vector, there we go. Let's connect that to the RGB. So this should go red, green and blue. Kind of works as you expect. And let's just quickly MIDI map those. That one there. Now the key, what I'm intending to show you here, is that once we've embedded these in the patch, then when we load the patch, they are going to still be there. Almost there. Okay, cool. I think I just tapped the wrong thing there. Yeah, there we go. I've got a wonky fader on my controller. Okay, cool. So we can see that's working. Now, as I'm not running this in the dynamic content wrapper, I have to make sure that I'm outputting texture. So that means that your patch IO needs to have a green texture connection added inline. Now I actually, because it's a yellow chain, I've had to use the clear and the render to texture to convert from yellow to green. I'm going to set that to auto as well, so it just looks at the size of the overall render chain. Now when it's like this, we should be able to just import it straight into AI and then just run the patch straight off from the performance page. So I'm going to just save that one, go to there, let's close that little monkey down, open my interface again. I'm going to just take my kaleidoscope off of there. There we go. Where did I go? There we go. So bring in the patch that I've just made, .tile pulse. That's going to just show blank because I've not even made a thumbnail for it. And then hopefully, when we click on like so, we should see our dots and they're pulsing and everything. So we've got that size control that lets us change the size, and we've still got our 3-place color control as well. Okay, cool. Just as reference there, so I did go to a couple of websites. So Shadertoy. So this one has loads and loads of shared generative content. You'll find some of it works, some of it doesn't work. Generally, if it can be compatible with GLES, then you are going to be in the best place. We need to update our... there we go. Tom recommends Sublime Text, as you get nice colour syntax highlighting. That's for looking at your shader code. Yeah, that's a good recommendation. I use Visual Studio Code as well, which is a free application from the people who make Microsoft. From Microsoft, the people who make Visual Studio. So Shadertoy is a good one to try out. Do keep an eye on that compiler and the messages it returns. That will help you find any errors that you have in that section of things. The other place that I thoroughly recommend is the Book of Shaders.com. So this one's really, really good for learning shader code, learning GLSL. There's loads of good stuff here. It's always worth having a look at the examples gallery. The examples gallery doesn't look huge on its own, but actually loads of these are subsections in subsections. So like if I go to more on patterns, and the nice thing with all of these is that they give you all the code. Let's just go into there, so you can actually sort of see how that runs. Am I going to be brave? Let's be really brave. I don't know. I haven't pre-planned this one at all. Let's have a quick try. This is where it all goes highly wrong when I try and improvise on the spot. Yeah, I'm not going to tackle that right now. It's giving me awkward errors. But yeah, that's where you need to look. Okay, so Ruben asked me very quickly then about... let's have a quick look. My friend and guru Tom is speaking. I'm noting that most of the Shadertoy code cannot be used in shows due to its licensing. That is a very valid point that Tom raises there. The type of sharing license that is on Shadertoy, a lot of it is unsuitable for live performance or performance where you might be earning or commercial use or things like that. So always have a look in the let's get my page up there again. Let's go to Shadertoy there. Quite often in that text section on the right they'll tell you, but Tom makes a very valid point there. It's great for learning. Yes. See, look, Sebastian was looking very well there. On this one here, if I copy all of that, it's a closed bracket that was missing according to Sebastian. It's the one that often catches me out. Let's just go there. Ooh, maybe not. Anyway, I'm not going to troubleshoot that right now. Ruben asked me very briefly about using Notch as an effect, and I really have no idea off the top of my head. Using Notch as a patch rather than an effect. I think distrib modules effects SVFX. I'm going to very quickly open the Notch patch, the Notch effect. I'm just trying to see if that has an easy one for me to deal with. Okay, there we go. So what I would probably do there, Ruben, the question about using Notch, if you want to use Notch as a patch, I would open up the Notch effect. I would make sure that it needs to texture out. I'd probably just put it on the end of there, to be honest. So I'd go GL clear, render to texture, GL render to texture. Is it there? There. I'd probably disconnect that, go out into there. Let's load a notch file. I don't know if this is going to work. I can't remember if it's going to save this notch file for me. And then we are going to go, let's just save that onto our desktop. Right, we're being very experimental here. I don't even know if this is going to work or not. It might work. It might work. No, it didn't work. Okay, that's fine. So what I'll do, Ruben, I'll have a look at that for you because maybe it wants it in output. Let's just try that. No, that's what happens when I try and rush one through. Yeah, I've crashed it. Sweet. There we go. Okay. So that was a fail at a last minute request there by Ruben. I will happily have a look at this, Ruben, though, and work out what I'll do. I will make let's have another quick look. I'm not aware of this. I'm not saying that there isn't a template, but it's not something that I have. I'm going to just have a look in here in the patches. No. What I will do, I will have a look, and I'll make an example, and I'll put it up in the files in the AI user group section. Yeah, I can't see a notch patch in there. Okay, yeah, let's forget about that one. So yeah, Shadertoy, Book of Shaders, both good websites. Correctly pointed out by Tom that Shadertoy is a good learning resource, but only use the ones that you have permission for. We have to respect our own creative industry. If we can't respect our own creative industry, why should other people respect us and pay us? Okay, so I think I am about to kind of call it a day there. So Cade is going to be up in about 4.5 of our good English hours. He will be up then. Next up we have Gordon on Wednesday. You have me on Wednesday as well because it's a Friday. This coming Friday is a bank holiday in the UK. Yes, we have a lot of them at this time of year. There are 2 coming up in May, I believe. But it means that on this Friday we are not doing any webinars, and that we are allowed a day off to stay in our homes and look longingly at the outside world. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much to Ruben, to Christopher, to Tom, to Sebastian, to anyone else whose names I have forgotten on that list. Been good to have you with us. Thank you very much, and I am going to call it a day there. Have a good day.